Tested it. It looks like we're on the Riverside link. Chris, are you good to go?
Yep.
All
Ready to
right,
go.
perfect. All right, everybody, let just start. We're going to start with the podcast. So, welcome back to the Simplify Senior Transition Podcast, the show that brings you real stories, expert guidance, and trusted resources to help families navigate the journey into senior living with confidence. I'm your host, Dale Corpus. I'm a senior transition specialist and real estate expert based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm also Filipino American and part of the sandwich generation, just like some of you, juggling work, raising kids, and figuring out how to best support our aging parents and even our grandparents. That's exactly why I started this podcast, because finding clear answers and support when caring for a loved one is hard. The information is scattered and it can feel like you're on your own. And my goal is to bring it all into one place. And today's guest is someone I've looked up to for some time now as I watch his story and journey on social media. Chris Punsalan is a caregiver, creator, and advocate who built a powerful online community around his role as a grandson. His videos documenting daily life with his Lola have reached millions and shined a light on what family caregiving really looks like, especially in the Filipino American experience. We're going to talk about his journey, the impact of culture and family, and what life looks like after caregiving when the legacy continues. So let's dive in. So, Chris, welcome to the show. How
Thank
are
you.
you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
I'm honored too. So this is a historic podcast episode for me in the sense that number one, I have a social media influencer right on this podcast, and also it's my first live stream podcast. So if anything goes sideways, forgive me. I'm still learning how to live stream this podcast, but um wanted to just already just jump into your story, Chris. So that being said, can you tell us about what made your grandmother, the relationship between you and your grandmother, so special?
Well, where do I I mean, what a heavy question, right? There's so many, I mean, where do I begin? So, I think what made our relationship so special was the fact that she raised me. She and like many other immigrant grandmothers who came here from the Philippines specifically, were at home taking care of their grandchildren while the parents were at work. And I think that's the common story for many Filipinos out there. And many Filipinos that I've spoken to, Filipino Americans specifically, have been raised by their Lola or their grandma. And so they have there's a special bond between a grandson and a grandma, especially when you live in the same household. And so I think that's where our relationship started, is when I was born, and I've been with her since the beginning. And that later turned into me stepping into a role that she once played for me, where I had to be the hands and feet for my grandmother because she could no longer use her limbs and walk around. So when I first became my grandmother's caregiver, I wasn't ever thinking, let me repay her for all the times that,
Mhm.
she was there for me. It was just an instinct that this is just the natural progression of life, and you step up for the people that you love, and there's no questions about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what did caregiving look like day to day when it was just the two of you at home?
We had a pretty packed schedule, but it was mundane but packed. So every day was the same. We would get up at 7. I would get her ready for breakfast, and that involves helping her use the bathroom, getting her cleaned up, getting her transferred onto the wheelchair, and then preparing her meals, and then repeating that process 3 to 4 times per day. And then on Fridays, she would have her usual everything shower. I know a lot of caregivers are familiar with the everything shower, where Monday through Thursday she's getting like a towel bath shower, but on Fridays is like, we got to get down and dirty and get her in the
Yeah.
shower and do the whole thing. And so that was my routine pretty much for the full 8 years that I was her full time caregiver, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I learned so much about my grandmother during that time, and we bonded in a way that I don't think I've ever bonded with any other person before. I'm sure I'll experience that when I have children one day, hopefully. And yeah, but it was a special experience that I'll never forget, and it's a story that I will continue to tell because I know how important it is.
Oh, nice. Now, What was the moment you realized I'm going to do this? I'm going to care for her myself.
Well, I mean, it wasn't so when I said it, right? So the this is how it happened. My grandmother just woke up one day and was no longer able to get out of bed. It was like at the snap of a finger, everything stopped working. We knew she had arthritis. We knew she had a hard time getting around, but there was just this one day she woke up and just literally couldn't get out of bed anymore. And so my parents and I had to make a decision that night where we either had to take her to a care facility
Right.
or figure out what to do. And so, without hesitation, I just said, I'll do it because I was in the last semester of college and I didn't have any opportunities lined up and I just said I'll do it not knowing what the next years of my life were going to look like. I just said I'll do it because in no world could I see my grandmother in a care facility.
Right, right,
So
right. Now, did you have support from other family members at the time, or was it mainly you navigating it solo?
it was me and my mom. It was me, my mom, and my grandmother. My mom was helping me a ton in the beginning. She was helping me with the daily routines and making sure, because my mom had already been taking care of my grandmother here and there for as long as I can remember. From a young age, I remember my mom helping my grandma take a shower and get to her appointments, and so they built up a little bit of a routine and the handoff, I guess she played a huge role in that, and even throughout the 8 years of being her caregiver, my mother was around as much as she could be because she worked a job, a 9 to 5, and she couldn't be there all the time. And so it was really me and my mom for most of it, and family members would step up on the weekends. Ended up having a nice system where my grandmother would get to visit one of her children's house on a Saturday, and then we pick her up on Sunday, and that gave me and my mom a nice day break.
Yeah.
And that's how we operated.
Yeah. Now, related question is, what was the hardest part about adjusting your life to step into the caregiver role?
I think changing my perspective on freedom
Okay.
because I was a young college student. I was like 21 years old. I feel like that's like the age that you're just primed and ready to go out and hang out with friends and figure out what your life is like after college. And because I was thrown so quickly into this role, I had to change my perspective on what freedom meant, and that meant not being able to go out as much as I could, not being able to travel, not being able to take job opportunities that were coming my way, and all of these things that was really difficult for me to adjust to in the beginning because I really thought, coming out of college, I was going to I didn't really know what I was going to do. I just knew that I was going to do something with my life. And so, having to adjust to being at home 24/7 pretty much 6 days a week, it was a tough transition, but I think as soon as I accepted the role and I saw what a blessing this was for my grandmother and me, the sooner that it was easier for me to accept like this isn't as bad as I'm making it out to be. Like
Hmm.
this is a good thing that I'm doing here.
Yeah. Now, what did you learn about yourself through caring for your grandmother?
Oh, so many things. I think one, what the biggest lesson is you'll be so surprised at what you can get used to because the intimate tasks that I had to do for my grandmother, the personal tasks like helping her use the bathroom or giving her a shower or things of that nature. I think at the beginning it was so difficult for me to do because that's not something I'm familiar with. I don't know if it's because maybe I'm a male and that's not really the role that males play, but that was quickly washed away. After the first month of consistently doing it every single day, it just became second nature to me. And I couldn't imagine anybody else doing that for my grandmother. Even when we would take her to one of her children's house on Saturdays, I would still step in and come in and do the personal tasks on that Saturday because I didn't think and I didn't believe that anybody else could do it the way that we've done it, and there was a trust issue there on my part. But yeah, I guess that was the one of the biggest lessons is that you would surprise yourself what you can actually get used to.
Okay, nice. Now,
Um,
Um, I want to segue into some questions related to culture and family and faith. So I'm Filipino American, just like you, and I know caring for our elders is part of our culture. In fact, it's almost considered taboo if you even think of wanting to send your parent or grandparent to an assisted living community. We typically take care of our own, and a lot of times here in the Bay Area, like a lot of the Filipinos, we are the caregivers. We
Yeah.
run a lot of the board and care homes in the area. I mean, we dominate in that space. So, how did your cultural upbringing influence your approach to caregiving?
I mean, I think it influenced all of that. It probably was so integral for the decision for wanting to step up in the first place.
Yeah,
But I didn't at the it wasn't until later that I started speaking to other people outside of the Filipino culture that it was a part of the Filipino culture. Like it's just so ingrained in me that I'm not thinking that this is what's normal for Filipinos. I'm just thinking this is what's normal in general. Like I had so many things that were presented to me that I wasn't familiar with, like people not growing up with their grandparents around, or people
yeah.
not having a close relationship with their siblings or parents, or all of these things that I feel like are so deeply rooted in Filipino culture that I didn't realize until I just started speaking to other people outside in other cultures. And so I think it was 100% the reason why I stepped up to do what I did.
Okay. It's a very related question then. Did you ever feel pressure to meet cultural expectations, or were you motivated by something deeper?
Never felt pressure. My parents checked in with me often throughout
Mhm.
those years, asking me if there was any support that I needed or if this was something that we should still continue. Um, and it was always without a doubt, for sure. I couldn't imagine doing anything else, doing stopping the this responsibility. Like there
Yeah.
was never that thought in my mind. Um, was I called? I don't think I would use that language at least at in the time that I was caring for my grandmother. Now that I've done so much reflection on that time and my faith journey has strengthened post caregiving, and I feel like my walk with God has strengthened so much in the last year and a half that I do think I was being called to something greater. I just didn't know. I couldn't put language to that
Yeah.
during that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, how did your faith factor into your caregiving journey, especially during the hard moments?
It was pivotal. I mean, I for a long time I borrowed my grandmother's faith, right? For more than I would say up until maybe 2 years ago, I was probably borrowing a lot of my family's faith, and I was very stuck in tradition, and I could never say that I had my own walk with God and my own relationship with the Lord. I think it was a lot of that was borrowed faith, and I think in the November before my grandmother was admitted into the hospital, I was watching a podcast with some friends of mine, and they were speaking about their relationship with God and their reading of scripture, and it was something that I longed for because when I would hear them and talk about their faith, there was such a peace to them. There was such a conviction in them and such something that I just wanted. And so that's when I started this whole journey of just learning what the church history and learning who Jesus was and learning all of the things that I grew up hearing about but not really understanding. And so I think when my grandmother was admitted into the hospital in her last 72 hours, my faith was the only thing that I could lean on because there was so much uncertainty. And, ultimately, when my grandmother passed, it was the thing that I held on to that gave me ultimate peace in knowing that this isn't the last time I'm ever going to see my grandmother and that she is probably doing much better than we are now. And it would be selfish for me to ask for her to come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Now, I know you're into music. You're a creative person, and what role did music, creativity, or personal rituals play in your time with her?
Oh my goodness, it was everything. It was so in 2014, I was on the quest to become successful on YouTube and be successful with music. I just
Yeah.
didn't really know how that was going to look, and so I just started uploading videos,
Yeah.
and slowly over time, I found my process, I found my people, and when I really dialed in making content and knew exactly who I was speaking to on the internet, that's when everything changed for me. And this was all while being a full time caregiver for my grandmother because I had no I had nothing but time on my hands to
Yeah.
work on music and videos because I was at home all day.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started my online business for music. That's when I started streaming on online. That's when I started making a bunch of music with a bunch of different people, all in the comfort of my home. And I learned I can't even begin to tell you my that's where my routines came from, that's where my business acumen came from, that's where everything came from, and I attribute all of my success not only to that time but through that growth of learning how to be successful online. I carry so many of those values and principles to this day. So, couldn't be more thankful for music.
Oh, wow. Now, how did caregiving shape your identity, not just as a grandson, but as a man, a creator, a role model?
Yeah, it was I mean, it was everything to me. I think the moment I don't know when this happened in my caregiving journey, but the moment that I knew that I was doing something, like I had a purpose to my life,
Hmm.
that was it brought a sense of peace that is indescribable because when you wake up every single day knowing the number one priority in your life is to do this
Hmm.
and you go out and you accomplish that thing. I mean, it's a never ending accomplishing thing, right? Like you're caregiving it, it's not over until you're over. But I think waking up every single day knowing that my number one priority in my life is to make sure that my grandmother is okay, it's such a freeing feeling because everything else in my life, the music, the online business, whatever, like everything else falls like to the wayside because my number one priority in my life is to take care of my grandmother and everything else is just extracurricular. So,
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about, the video and social media for a little bit because you're quite the social media powerhouse, obviously. And you do such a good job at just documenting stories. You're such a good storyteller online. When did you first decide to start documenting your caregiving journey?
I would say I mean, early days. So like I said, in 2014, I decided to put out my first ever YouTube video, and then throughout that time, I would introduce my not introduce is such a, I guess that's the best way I can describe it. But I was just always about documenting every single part of my life because that's what I grew up knowing. My dad had a video camera or a camcorder in his hands for every single event you could think of, and so that's where I picked up the rhythm of just recording everything, and so I would show parts of my life, but more intensely in the last 2 years of my grandmother's life, I just made one mic'd up video where I was wearing a mic and I was explaining my day in the life as a caregiver, and it absolutely exploded online. And I got so much love from former and current caregivers that I had I felt a new responsibility to continue making these videos for those people.
Yeah, give you a sense of purpose. Now, how did it feel like when it went viral?
Um, it was intense. It was now again, I mean by this point I'm very familiar with posting content
Yeah.
online. So I've had videos go quote unquote viral before, but
Yeah.
this was something different. I think because the virality was also it came with people messaging me with long stories of who they are, what they're doing, and how it relates to me, or their story of my I used to take care of my grandparents, and just seeing you reminded me so much of that time with them, and I'm so thankful to have found you online. And so it was the virality of it. It was cool, right? Like obviously it's cool to see people hitting like on your video, but I think what was more special to me were the people that reached out and the people that commented during that time. And even now, like people still comment the same like story and their testimony of like how they found me or what they used to do for their grandparents or parents. And I think that was the thing that I treasure more than the views or the likes or the shares.
Yeah, it feels like you had your way of creating this instant connection with somebody going through something similar, and they feel so close to you, or so genuine and authentic, and it really, really shows. Now, were you ever have hesitant to share something so personal to the world?
At the beginning, no, because I've always been so transparent online. I don't ever feel like I have anything to hide necessarily, and so which I think comes with its, with it comes with its cons, right? Of
Yeah.
being extremely transparent. Like I've had many times, where I've had a family member or my one of my parents is like coming up to me and is like, maybe we shouldn't talk about this or maybe we shouldn't show that. And so I think in the beginning I did have to scale it back a little bit. Not because I was trying to expose, but I was really coming from a place of I want people to feel seen and I want this to be a teachable moment. Because my grandmother was a teacher, she was a public school teacher for 20 years.
Mhm.
And I think that was just another part of her that was ingrained in me is to teach other people. And but I had to quickly realize like maybe not everything should be shown online, and so I did become more aware of it soon after I posted that first video of me and my grandmother.
Okay, now how has your audience evolved since those early videos?
Um, so in the beginning, I think it was a lot of people just telling me their personal story of how they were caregivers for somebody or they're actively caring for somebody, and I've tried to keep up with as many of those people as possible. And because some people have been around since the very beginning, since that first video, I've heard updates and stories, and people have told me that when the person that they were caring for when they first reached out has passed, and
Mhm.
now they're in a different season of life, and we sort of share this bond of we were in it at the same time and now we're out of it and now we're trying to grieve together and we're figuring out what that looks like. And it's such a beautiful community that I've been able to accumulate, like to build online, that what a special connection I have with some of these people that I've never even seen or talked to in person, or and like they're sharing such intimate and personal details with me that I don't take for granted and I don't take lightly. And so that's sort of I guess the transformation is like a deeper connection with my audience versus like a surface level like, hey, I see what you're doing and I love it.
Yeah, yeah. Now, have you received messages from others who started caregiving because of your story?
Yeah, I've actually received yes. Yes, to answer your question. And I've also received messages from parents who've said, my kids have watched your videos, and now they jokingly say that when we get older, they want to take care of us the way that I'm doing for my grandmother. So I get both sides.
Yeah. You're an inspiration to the younger generation of caregivers, it seems. And hey, related question: what's the most surprising or emotional comment slash message you've ever received from a stranger?
Hearing people tell me that watching my videos is helping them continue on their journey um, is something that it's hard for me to really fathom what that feels like for somebody.
Hmm.
Like to hear somebody say, I have been struggling for so long, and just seeing your videos and seeing your grandmother smile or seeing how you persevere in certain moments has given me the strength to also continue and to not feel so alone in this journey. And that has been something that has been it feels heavy at times because it feels like such a big responsibility for me to carry. And I don't want to scare the audience. I don't want to not encourage people to reach out and do that. But I think it's just like a friend telling you everything that they're going through, and you're like, man, I wish I could do so much more for you than just tell you that I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And if you multiply that by thousands, it's there's a tough. I guess I'm put in an interesting position where like I want to help, but I can't extend myself to millions of people, and so yeah, it's heavy, and I never take it for granted. It's such a personal thing that I know people are reaching out to me for, and I appreciate everybody who is willing to be vulnerable with me in that way.
Yeah. No, I now I want to talk and just ask you questions related to even life after your grandma. So, when your grandma passed, what was the transition like from full-time caregiver to finding yourself again?
It's funny because I was actually just talking about this yesterday with my cousin, and we were trying to figure out in what way, like, how do we describe what caregiving looks like, because it looks different to everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I fully quote unquote found myself. I don't think you ever find yourself. I think you find bits of yourself and you find things that you enjoy, but I think this life is a never-ending quest to figuring out what it is that brings us joy in this life. And the thing that I've really come to come to learn that has helped me so much is trying everything, anything that I recognize that it's a huge privilege that I have because not everybody has the time or the capacity to try a bunch of things. But I have thrown myself into so many different opportunities that are adjacent to caregiving because that's what's been knocking at my door, right? Like this podcast,
Right.
many opportunities with other companies, starting a company of my own that are, and all of this is related to caregiving. And so me just trying, like saying yes to almost every single opportunity has afforded me clarity
Mm-hmm.
because it's just like pushed the narrative to me that this is where I need to continue being at because I know that people are following me to see what life is like post caregiving. And there are people following me who are going to fill that role for somebody else in the future. And I think I need to continue to be in this space for other people who are going to be here. So I guess to answer your question in a long-winded way, it's the clarity has come from doing and
Yeah.
not theorizing.
Yeah. No, I like that. No, it's just you're not afraid to try new things and you keep failing forward, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, after your grandma passed, um, what were the first few weeks like emotionally? Did you feel lost, relieved, grief stricken, or all of the above?
All of the above. I mean, you go through so many emotions, and I think like I've heard somebody say grieving is not linear. It's not like you get better today and then you get better again the next week and the next week. It's like an up and down cycle. And I think I'm just now starting to realize that the grief that I experienced is more anticipatory grief
Yeah.
versus grief that you feel when a loved one of yours is no longer like suddenly gone.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people reach out to me in regards to how do I deal with this all of a sudden grief versus the anticipatory grief,
Yeah.
because for 8 years I was already grieving the loss of my grandmother because I'm thinking about the mortality of my grandmother every single day. The thought of her dying is knocking at my door every single day that I wake up. When I walk down into her room at 5 in the morning, I'm constantly thinking like, is this the time that I'm going to walk in and she's no longer here? And so when you think about this on a day-to-day basis, I think you become numb to this idea and the shock. And so that when it finally happens, you're maybe not as sad as
Mm-hmm.
people expect you to be. You're maybe not as uh, emotionally distraught as people are at the funeral. And at first, it was confusing to me because I had no idea. Like, I was wondering, like, am I just emotionally tapped out? Am I insensitive? What am I like? Why am I not crying in the way that everybody else is crying? Well, it's because I have been on this journey of grief for 8 years. And so, I knew at least this is where it was heading. And so it wasn't too much of a shock for me. And so, like, I think that's been my journey since my grandmother's passed.
Mm-hmm. What do you wish people knew about that after caregiving period that no one really talks about?
That's a good question. One, I wish people knew that the experience that other people feel might not be exactly what you feel, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. Like I tell people that all the time. Like I was saying, people ask me all the time, like, "Hey, I just lost a parent. Um, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what to feel. I have no idea where to turn." And I try to, I try to come from a place of like, I am not the expert in
Mm-hmm.
caregiving or grief, and the things that I've experienced you might not be experiencing because it's just a different situation. And so I hope people can understand that there really is no preparation emotionally, at least.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of like getting estate planning, like all of the logistical stuff for sure
Yeah.
can be sorted out, but emotionally, I don't think there's any preparing that you can do to prepare you for the moment that your loved one passes. And that's okay. And I know it's scary, but I think the sooner that people can accept that, the easier it is when that time finally comes.
Yeah, yeah, no, I like that. Now, how did you begin to rediscover your sense of purpose outside of your caregiving role?
I think I'm in such a unique position in terms of like being a caregiver because I'm so online. Like I'm you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I am constantly on the internet making
Yeah.
content and I reflect about my time as a caregiver on a day-to-day basis, probably more than normal. And so like I think through that reflection it has afforded me clarity like I was saying, and it's really showed me that this is where I need to be at, and these are the people that I'm put here to serve, and this is like the I this is where I feel at home. Like talking about my story is it feels so natural to me, and so like I can't imagine myself doing anything else.
No, I feel like it energizes you.
Yeah.
I can feel it. I can feel it in this conversation, man. So, in what ways does your grandmother still guide or inspire you today?
One, I can hear her continually telling me to continue saving my money. Be be frugal. That's what I can hear her saying that. I say that jokingly, but I do agree, and I think it would be such a waste to waste my blessings financially on frivolous things, on materialistic things that don't actually bring me long term joy. I'm not against having material things, but I think if I'm buying something to bring me long term joy, then I should probably check myself about that. So, one, save money. Two, it's to share my blessings with other people, whether that be my time, my talents, um, anything that I have been given, I am called to share it.
Yeah.
And I can constantly hear my grandmother telling me to do that because even in my grandmother's later years, she was providing for her family back home, her sisters, her siblings in the Philippines. She was constantly checking on on her house and making sure that it was kept, and making sure everybody back home is okay. And so I think those are the two things that really stand out. Those are the two values that I carry with me: is one, not being frivolous with my money, and two, sharing my blessings with family and friends.
Nice. Now, um, do you see yourself as a caregiving advocate now, even though you're not caregiving full time anymore?
Yes, 100%. I think that the word advocate is used a lot, and it could be very general because like what does it mean for you to be a caregiver advocate, right? But I think when I hone in and zoom in on the word advocate, I think that means one, building a community and fostering a community of like-minded people, aka caregivers, or
Yeah.
people who are going to step into the season of caregiving, and pouring into them and sharing everything that I have, and not only sharing my experiences, hearing other people's experiences, and making a room full of people that can share their experience to then help other people going through it. So it's like a nonstop cycle of like sharing your story, but then also sharing your story is helping out people who are listening to you. And so I think that's one. And continuing to make content online about caregiving, and providing people with resources like who is the best elder law attorney in your area, in the Las Vegas area, in the San Francisco area, who is the best estate planner in your area, like connecting people to resources that are adjacent to caregiving. I think that has been a newer thing for me, and in any way that I could provide support to caregivers, that's where I'm spending my time.
Yeah, no, nice. I've Now that I've gotten in working with seniors, I've become that resource to be that connector of answering those same questions that you're talking about in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
So, and it feels like I'm creating a new sense of purpose for myself, and it feels really nice, you
yeah.
know? Now, what message would you want to share with young people who are facing the decision to become a caregiver for a parent or grandparent?
Oh, what a tough and noble responsibility to take on. Also, I want to be very transparent to people, and I don't, while I am an advocate for people caring for their grandparents or their parents or their loved one in the comfort of their home, I understand that not everybody has that luxury, and some people have to send their grandparents or their parents into a facility. And in no way do I want to be in the camp of looking down on
Yeah.
that, because everyone's situation is so different, and I would hate to be placed in the category of, hey, this is the guy that wants, if you're not taking care of your loved one at home, then you're shunned, or like you're seen as like less than or whatever, because I think everyone's situation is different, right? So I think understanding that if you are put in a corner and you have to do that, that's okay, and if that's the best that you can do, and if the care that can be the care that can be given to your parent or your grandparent exceeds what you could have provided at home in a facility, then by all means do what you have to do. And I guess uh I mean, there's so many things I want to tell future caregivers, but I think one thing that I've uncovered uh, as a caregiver, and now that I'm on the other side talking to hundreds of caregivers on a day-to-day basis, caregivers have such a hard time asking for help.
Yeah.
Whether that means asking a friend or a family member to come in for a couple hours just so you could step outside or have lunch or have dinner with a friend, or finding respite care, or finding a facility that's willing to look after your loved one just for a little bit, just so you could get that space. I think more caregivers need to hear that they have the permission to do that, and that it's actually an act of love. It's an act of love to carve out space for yourself, because that's going to recharge you to 100 to take care of your patient or loved one at 100%, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
If you're giving your loved one or your patient 10% when they deserve 100, you owe it to yourself and your loved one to find some help. Don't be shy, or don't be ashamed
Hmm.
to ask for help. I mean, and I say this as somebody who felt shame in that, right? Who
Hmm.
felt guilty for asking an auntie or a cousin, like, hey, can you step in
Yeah.
for a couple hours? Because to me, it felt like I've given up.
Yeah.
But really, it's an act of love for your patient or loved one to seek help and to refill your cup in another place, so that you can come back and be fully present with your loved one. And so that's what I would hope that people hearing this can really take away from this, is that you have the permission to ask for help, and that you haven't given up. You're actually doing it because you are of service to this person.
Yeah, that's a great message for everybody to hear. Now, what advice would you give to adult children who are watching their parents age but don't know where to start?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wish I knew the right resource or guide to helping you out, because it's so situational. I have, in the last year of just like talking to facilities and talking to professionals, there are so many different diseases and situations and all of these things, and like, where is the ultimate resource, right? Like, I wish there was just a one stop shop for you to be like, hey, this is the thing that I'm experiencing, like, what do I do next? And so I think, just, and I hate giving general advice. I only want to give practical advice to people that can like actually learn
Yeah.
from. But looking for local resources in your area, there are people who are willing to help. And I think if you just start seeking, like, if your mother has dementia or Alzheimer's, like, looking for specialists in your area to help you with the next steps. Like, what's the next step for my mom with Alzheimer's? Are we now in a rhythm of going once a month to the doctor? Or so I think, just I think awareness is the first step of knowing that your parent might be experiencing something, and then looking for professionals in your local area to help guide you through this season.
Okay. Now, if someone listening is in the thick of caregiving right now and feels invisible, what would you say to them?
I mean, obviously, I want to say you're not. I don't know if that feels like a band-aid
Mm-hmm.
to put on the statement, because that's such a real statement that also felt, even after posting videos of my grandmother online, and all these wonderful people would reach out and tell me their story. I still felt invincible.
Yeah.
Or not invincible, invisible.
Right.
I wish I felt invincible. I felt invisible. I felt like nobody truly understood what I was going through. I only shared that sentiment with my mother, but there's only so much that I could share with my mother, where it's like, it got to a point where it was like, yeah, we get it. We're both fed up, but like, what is that really going to do for our situation? So I think, one, to understand that you truly are not alone, and that there's community out here. I've built out community, and there are so many kind people on the internet, and I know that feels like such a band-aid answer, and it doesn't address the root. But you're not alone. And I experienced what the feelings that you're feeling too, and Yeah, you're not alone, and there's community out there for you online. And I think even like I think the one thing that everybody could use is more support, right? Like people, like physical support. Like people want people to step in and help you out for like give me a week long vacation so I could take a break. But I think aside from that, I think just wanting to be heard by other people is so key for caregivers. Like if you could just sit down for 10 to 15 minutes and talk to another caregiver who knows what you're going through, and you just vent all of these things that you've been harboring, I think that does so much for a person. So I think seeking community online is so important.
No, I like that. Now, one of my last questions is, what's one thing you think the world needs to understand better about caregivers?
Ooh, that it's tough. It's a full time job,
It's
and
taxing. Yeah.
it's so taxing. It's uh, I don't know what the experience of working at a 9 to 5 and trying to get them to understand that you need time off to take care of I don't know what that life is like. My
Yeah, yeah.
mom does, and I know that a lot of people listening to this do know what that life is like, and a lot of employers don't recognize that caregiving for a mother or a father or a grandparent, it's like it's a full-time job, especially if they're deep in the stages of Alzheimer's or dementia or they can't move or whatever the case may be. It is a full-time job, and I hope through the advocacy that I'm doing and that you're doing by platforming people and letting people speak, talk about their experience. I hope that we can really get the world to understand that caregiving is a full-time job and that we need to respect it. And as employers, I don't know what the right answer is for employers, but if we could get some support for the caregiver to be able to do both, because one, I mean, I could go on a whole rant about this, but like caregivers are severely underpaid, and
Yeah.
you there's no way you could survive off a caregiver salary. Like it's almost impossible. It's impossible. I'm not even gonna say it's impossible. And so like to have to be at home full time and to also be thinking about how am I gonna maintain this 9 to 5 job, like it's I can't even imagine. So I hope we can get to a world where caregiving is respected as a full time job and people can stay at home with their loved one, and not have to think about working another job.
Nice. Now, we covered a lot.
Yeah,
Now, I want to just double check. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you yet?
that is a good question. Um, Nothing I can think of. I think I've I feel very relieved that I was able to say everything that I wanted to. No, I can't think of anything.
Then where can people connect with you? Follow your journey more or support your ongoing work?
Yeah, I'm on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. If you just search Chris Punsalan, even if you spell it wrong, it'll probably autocorrect and you'll find it. And direct messages or emails, I try to read every single comment, email, DM. In any way that you try to reach out to me, I try to respond. And so if you have a question or anything, don't feel hesitant to reach out. I've gotten a lot of that where I reply to people and they're like, I had no idea you would have had time to reply. But like, this is literally all I do. So I have nothing but time to reply.
I, I have like a trivia related question then. How many DMs do you get a day?
Oh, it's it's intense. I get hundreds a day, and
Yeah,
it's overwhelming, and I
yeah.
try so hard. I mean, I've had to hire somebody to help me get through all of them, right? Because I don't want to miss anything, and I want to respect people's honesty and vulnerability. So I get so many messages every day.
Well, I'm happy that somehow, some way, my DM got to you, and then you replied, knowing that you have so much volume of messages coming through.
Yeah.
So wrapping up, Chris, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here today. Your honesty, love, and voice have uplifted so many caregivers, especially in the Filipino American community. So, what you share today is a reminder that caregiving is not just a responsibility, it's an act of legacy, resilience, and deep human connection. And for those of you tuning in. If your loved one is considering senior living and you need to figure out what to do with their home, let's talk. Learn more about my services at www.simplifyseniortransitions.com. Schedule a free consultation with me by clicking on my consultation link on the website, or DM me on Instagram at Soul by Dale. And if you'd like a copy of today's episode transcript and bonus show notes, including key takeaways from Chris's story, head to simplifyseniortransitions.com/Chris Punsalan. It's totally free and created especially for podcast listeners of this episode. And if this episode resonated with you, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps more families find the show. And don't forget to share this episode with someone who might be caring for an aging parent or loved one right now. Thanks again for watching. Thanks again, Chris, for one last time for being on the episode. And for the rest of you, I'll see you on the next episode of the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast. We're done.
Cool.
Yeah, I just